Hi, I'm Tom Strachan from the Fantasy Sanctuary. This is Dynasty Hot Seat. Let's get going.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Dynasty Hot Seat, the only Dynasty show that's a certified inferno. And we've got, one of the best guests that you could get in, not just like the fantasy community, but like the world community, right? This is Tom Strachan back on the hot seat at NFL_T-Strack. As he said at the top, member of that dynamic duo over at the Fantasy Sanctuary with Rich Cooling also been in the hot seat a couple of times. Tom, brilliant to have you back on the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. It's always nice getting a chance to chat with you. You know, both me and Rich are big fans of your channel and everything you're doing. And yeah, it's a busy time of year. There is no time to stop. The seat is definitely hot.
Exactly. Yeah, the seat never ever cools down here. So I just want to thank everybody new joining, by the way, because a couple of new people always pop along. Just make sure you're do me a favor here, not hitting that subscribe button and the bell. I don't know, Tom, do you care about the bell? People always ask about the bell. I actually don't care about the bell.
I mean, we tell people to press it. I think it's better if, for people going live, you want to have that bell on. You want to make sure you're seeing people as soon as it's on.
There you go. So yeah, hit that bell as well, because Tom says, all right, hit that bell. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into some hints and tips, and then Tom's going to talk through some of these 2023 rookies in a little mock draft. But we're going to start off with section one, some hints and tips. You got sort of one all-encompassing tip for us, Tom, don't you?
Yeah, it's just this isn't the time of year to switch off. I think there's sometimes people get fatigued coming out of the season. It's like, oh, I can't look at my dynasty team right now. I know it needs work, but I can't be dealing with it right now. I've spent 17 weeks setting lineups. The season's over and I just need some distance and I'll dial back in at the draft. And that is not the way to do it. This is the time of year where you need to be just working out, okay, what do I need to make my team better this year? What do I need from the draft? What do I have? And if I don't have what I need to be able to make my team better, how am I going to get it? Like, I've got one team which me and Rich did a video on about. It's probably the worst dynasty roster you could ever imagine. And it's true. But the key thing there is that I know I've got like 4 second-round picks and 3 first-round picks. And it's going, okay, how can I start spinning them into 24 picks already? Because I know that team, no matter what I do, is not going to be contending this year. And even though the 23 class, which was hyped for a couple of years, is the greatest class of all time, has started to dip off a lot, there's still going to be plenty of hype when we get into these rookie drafts. So you need to be ready to do what you need to do to be able to turn your dynasty teams around. Or if you're a contender, then, sitting back isn't the time of year for it either. I mean, I had a team which absolutely destroyed a league the year before. And then last year I went out about this time and bought Ramondre Stevenson for a 3rd-round pick. People say don't buy running backs this time of year, but that's like, don't buy the top tier running backs. Don't buy the guys where, you're going to be spending 1st-round picks and stuff on them. Go out and throw 3rd-round picks at stuff, because I think whilst there's some interesting players in the 3rd of this, if you can get somebody with the potential to do what Ramondre Stevenson did last year, then that's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you're right, the perfect time of year to actually, if you're talking about trying to get some 2024 picks, this is the time of year where it's perfect to capitalize on if you're going to sell some of these picks, because at the minute everybody's got rose tinted glasses on, like no one's got drafted to the New England Patriots yet, right? No one's plummeting in value because of where they've landed. Everyone's thinking, oh, great, I've got Devon Etienne. Imagine if he ends up on this, or he goes to the Chargers, or he goes to where. But then one of these guys, or probably half these guys, are going to have bad landing spots and their value's going to plummet. So this time of the year is perfect for, taking advantage of those rose tinted glasses and selling these picks on for for perhaps, a healthy profit, or maybe because of the depth of this class, selling some of those late first round picks and picking up a couple of second round picks, and you're getting pretty much the same kind of player, but you got a little bit extra on top now as well.
100%. Yeah, completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, 100%. Be active. I can only assume people listening to Dynasty, content at this time of year. You guys are all active anyway, so pat on the back for each and every one of you. So let's dive right into it then, Tom, shall we? I'll pull up a little sleeper tab here. We're going to pick every player here. We're going to go through 2 rounds, and let's start off the top. It is super flex, but I mean, yeah, are you going to break the streak of everyone taking Bijan at 1, or are you going to?
No, I can't. And I mean, the thing, it's tricky for me with Bijan. So I don't watch college. I only dive into the rookies when we get to January. And I've been hearing about Bijan since before Breece Hall was drafted as like the certified 101 of this class. Yeah. And up until now, it's kind of like that thing where it's like, all right, well, is there a possible situation where he gets a poor landing spot and Anthony Richardson perhaps gets a really good landing spot? I think that's the only way we can flip it. But for now, with everything we know, and when we're seeing Bijan Robinson being mocked to places like the Bengals, you've just got to take him at the 101. Even if you don't need a running back, it's better to take the value of him, and then you'll be able to trade him and get an incredible good value on him even a few months down the line.
Yeah, I completely agree. I put a tweet after having Ryan McDowell on the show here, the last guest before yourself, and we kind of talked about like what would need to happen for Bijan not to be the 101, and yeah, he kind of said like, yeah, he ends up in, we mentioned him earlier, like he ends up in like New England, where like it's a bit of a tricky situation there for any running back. Plus you got your guy Ramondre Stevenson as well there. That's a bit tricky, and then like Bijan like goes like 101 to the Panthers, right? Then that is like 2 worlds colliding, and that might knock Bijan off, but 99% sure here that he's going to be the 101. So we'll get him locked in. And then who's going right after him then at the second pick of the first round?
So if you'd asked me this a few weeks back after the combine, it probably wouldn't have been Bryce Young, but I'm going to go with Bryce Young. I think he's really had an up and down process before the combine. People were talking about how, we were expecting him to possibly weigh as little as 170 pounds and be like 5'9" or so. And that would have been incredibly difficult for him to come back from, because that's just so far below what any NFL quarterback has played at. But between weighing in at a kind of reasonable level at over 200 pounds, and technically it was sort of like 5'10", I think, when he was height wise. So you can make a comparison to guys like Russell Wilson, and you can make a comparison to Kyler Murray. But the thing that Bryce Young does is he has this great release, which is really, when he releases the ball, it's high. Whereas, you look at somebody like Will Levis, he's quite often going low and looking to get around players. But Bryce Young, he's just a really good quarterback, progresses through his reads well. He's a very intelligent quarterback, and I think he's going to have a really successful NFL career if he lands with the right coaching spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. And he looks sort of odds on, right, to go to the Texans, who are already, starting to address their offensive line, paying linemen more than anybody else in the league. So that's huge for Bryce Young, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got a player like Laramie Tunsil protecting you. It's always going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bryce Young in at 2 then. And are we going his close rival at 3 then, or are we kind of switching it up a bit?
Well, I'm going to go with Anthony Richardson. This is the point in the draft where, I think CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, there's very little between them in terms of what they can bring as fantasy prospects. But Anthony Richardson, the ceiling is just going to be so much higher. We saw at the combine, we all knew that he was an athletic beast and he was really going to do fantastic things. But this isn't Malik Willis 2.0. People who say that haven't watched a lot of football. Malik Willis went to Liberty and didn't dominate there. Anthony Richardson was in a good division and played well. He works his feet well in the pocket. And yes, he does have some mechanical issues and his footwork occasionally can be a mess. But the upside of what he can bring is like a 240-pound quarterback who can run a 4.4 40-yard dash. That's what we're after in fantasy. I like scoring points in fantasy.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen him. I've seen this today. He deliberately threw the ball against the ceiling there, right? Just so people can say that about Anthony Richardson's ceiling, right? He 100% did that on purpose, right?
I think it's just one of those where it's like, I could do it. I wonder what people will say.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, if you've not seen them already, there's definitely Anthony Richardson ceiling jokes about to flood Twitter with that video, right? For sure. I'm certainly going to do it anyway. Actually, I've not tweeted that out yet, so stay tuned. That's coming to a Twitter deck near you. So we got Anthony Richardson locked in. Who's coming right after him?
Next, it would be CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is probably the most likely person to be picked at 101 overall. Underdog Fantasy had an incredible video this season where Josh McCown, who's now the Panthers quarterback coach, was breaking down each of the prospects with Josh Norris. And Josh McCown just was visibly excited by CJ Stroud. It's really worth looking up. Yeah. You can really see so many of Stroud's real high points in it. And I do think that Stroud can be an elite player in this league. It's just we only really saw him creating out a structure, occasionally, and we only saw that one game in the national championship where he was really displaying what he can do with his legs. So perhaps we see more of that at the next level. I mean, the Panthers have brought in a lot of really good coaching staff. I think Frank Reich is an excellent person to be around for a rookie quarterback. So I have no hesitation with that. I just think, given what's around him at the Panthers, it's a little hard to really project too high of a ceiling straight away.
Yeah, and what CJ Stroud has in favor for him is, you just have to look right at Justin Fields at Ohio State just the year like before, where he wasn't really allowed to use his legs as much. And maybe it's a scheme thing over there where they don't want the quarterback running, taking big hits. They want him to be more pocket passers. So hopefully for Stroud, he gets to showcase that a little more at the Panthers, who, like you would imagine, will let him off the leash a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a season where the Panthers feel like that they can do some good things in that division. It's not the toughest division out there. There's a lot of teams who are stuck in limbo. And I feel like if he can get a good preseason underneath him, Andy Dalton's there, who is the kind of quarterback who will take a rookie under his wing, then he could hit the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So we got Stroud locked in at 4. Who's coming up behind him at pick number 5?
So I'm going Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he is, without doubt, one of the most exciting prospects that I've come across in this year's draft process. Yeah. I think, you go back to the days where he was out playing Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave when they were on the same team together. Yeah. And people will talk about him being a slot-only player, but I play predominantly in PPR leagues, occasionally in half PPR leagues, but it doesn't really matter. We look at Amon-Ra St. Brown or Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp. These are the guys that if you've had 2 of them on your team over the last few years, then your fantasy team has been excellent. Even a guy like Christian Kirk last year was running virtually all of his work out of the slot. As long as you've got an offensive coordinator who's going to deploy them not only in slot routes, which come back sort of like horizontal along the line of scrimmage, but if you get somebody who's sending them vertical as well, then they can really explode and become just an excellent option for fantasy. We had Andrew Erickson on from Fantasy Pros to do a mock draft with us, and he had a great line where it's like, okay, Jackson Smith-Njigba is never going to take an 80-yard screen to the house, but he might catch 8 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown on one drive, and that'll work out more points anyway.
Excellent point, right? Yeah, it's all about scoring points at the end of the day. Yeah, and you want that, like those target hogs, especially in PPR. And it doesn't matter where Smith-Njigba goes, he's going to see a ton of targets. So, yeah, I think he's He seems to be fairly consensus wide receiver one now, Tom, right?
I think so. I mean, my co-host Rich, he's got Jordan Addison ahead of him, and I know he's very high on him. I know Daniel Jeremiah thinks Jordan Addison could be really special. But yeah, we've kind of seen Quentin Johnston slip down mock drafts. It's like him and Jackson Smith and Jigba have flipped. Quentin Johnston was going around that sort of pick 12 where the Texans have their second pick, but now he slid back to sort of like where Baltimore are at pick 23, and JSN's jumped up by about 10 picks.
Yeah, but an elite talent without doubt, and great value at pick 5 there as well. So who's coming in at pick number 6?
We'll go Jahmyr Gibbs next. I think, he's a really exciting prospect, somebody that, like, for me, I just look at and I go, this is a guy who's going to get on the field early. Yes, he's only 199 pounds, and okay, that's not ideal, but that's kind of like Austin Eckler size. So
yeah,
as long as he bulks up enough to be able to take the hits, then that's fine. But I'm also not looking for somebody to get 100% of the carries. I don't need somebody to get 100% of the carries. So few running backs do get 100% of the carries. Like,
true.
And even then, what are we talking? 70%? I don't need that. He's an incredibly explosive player. His 10-yard split was 1.52, 40-yard dash time, 4.36. So if he can get on the field, he's going to create explosive plays. And if he can create explosive plays, then that's fine. I'll take 80-yard run to the house and a touchdown on 15 touches or something like that. That's fine. And particularly, like, I play a lot of best ball and come a lot of this from best ball point of view. But in Dynasty best ball leagues, I think he could be a slam dunk and could be really important down the stretch when we're getting towards the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, the one knock on him, like you said, is like his size or like his weight. And you have to remember, like, these are rookies. Like, this guy's what, 21 years old. He doesn't have like fully like developed, like, I don't want to say old man strength, but you know what I mean, right? He's still got a lot growing into his body to do still at that age, right?
100%. I mean, it's like he's 20. I think he might be 20 by the time the season starts. But yeah that's, he's going to get into an NFL program. And yes, there are plenty of really good college programs that really have these athletes playing to a higher standard than we did 20, 30 years ago. But when he gets into the NFL program, we've seen players completely change and develop when we get there. So I have no worries about him.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think he's a great talent. Can't wait to see where he ends up. Actually, it'll be really exciting. But for now, he's sitting at pick 6, and who's coming in after him at pick number 7?
I'm going to go with Jordan Addison. I think he is probably very close to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he's probably one of those players who really does have a top tier kind of ceiling. I think, he's going to get the BMI issues thrown at him again, but do we not learn? I mean, we did this with Devonta Smith, and I had so much Devonta Smith on my teams last year.
Same.
And so many of my teams that did really well, it was thanks to Devonta Smith. So look, I mean, there's a difference between Devonta Smith and Tutu Atwell. There's, Jordan Addison is not that slight. He's only 173 pounds. So that's fine. I think, when you look at Addison, he's a real natural route runner. He can create separation, manipulate defenses. And it's like, that's the kind of player who is going to get on the field because he just does stuff so well.
Yeah. And if you think about like the way he played, like, he's not stupid either. Like, he's not going to be trying to take on massive 240-pound linebacker. Like, he's not an idiot. Like, he knows what size he is. He's been that size his whole life, right? So he's going to, like, select clever routes to run, make smart choices, and understand that he's not as big as these other guys. And yeah, being that size his entire career, I fully trust Addison to, well, first of all, probably just be open, so it doesn't matter. And secondly, to not make stupid decisions on the football field. So I'm not too worried about Addison at all, really. Is there any kind of landing spot for him? You'd be like, oh, don't like that, or you happy enough with him?
I don't think so. I think, there's places where he could go where it would be difficult, like, say, the Eagles or somewhere like that, where he could face real elite competition. But I think where Jordan Addison is being mocked in a lot of drafts, you're talking about the mid-20s, you're talking about teams like the Ravens, you're talking about teams like the Vikings. These are teams that they could do with a wide receiver 2, they could do with a wide receiver 1 in Baltimore's case. I think even if he ended up in a team like the Chiefs, he's probably not going to see as high volume as he could in other places because Travis Kelce dominates so much. But that's fine. I mean, the further down the board he slips, as long as he's a day 1 pick, he's just ending up in better offenses.
Yeah, absolutely. He'd be a good. Well, as a Ravens fan, right? You got that new offensive coordinator, right? Looking to establish a bit more of a passing game. Jordan Addison, Rashad Bateman, that'd be pretty nice, right, Tom?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Ravens got mocked for picking up Nelson Aguilar, but John Harbaugh said this week, it's part of it. It's not the end of changing the wide receiver room. Yeah. But yeah, somebody like Jackson Smith-Njigba or Jordan Addison would be an incredible add to really round out that room and give them much needed youth infusion.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So we have Addison in there at pick 7, and who's following up then?
I'm going to go with another wide receiver. I think, I firmly believe that wide receivers are a really good way to build your dynasty team out. I think like a few years back, I ended up with a lot of Jamar Chase in drafts simply because he fell down to sort of this range of drafts sometimes. I think you look at Zay Flowers and he's got a really wide range of outcomes in mock drafts. Daniel Jeremiah has kind of mocked him as high as sort of 14 in some drafts, and then sort of down around where the Patriots are, and then all the way down to like the Ravens or the Chiefs, all the way down to 31. So he could easily sort of go anywhere, but he's 5'9", 180 pounds, ran a 4.42 at the combine. He's a good route runner. He can separate. He's got, little subtle movements that he can throw defenders off. So he does lots of things well, but he doesn't do anything like truly elite when you watch him. But in the right offense, I'm kind of hoping that he finds a wide receiver coach and an offensive coordinator who can unlock that and help take it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think Zay Flowers will get him locked in at a pick 8. He's a guy that, so I kind of been doing these videos, Tom, where it's like ADP, like based on a couple of mock drafts from all around like the dynasty and the fantasy community. I've done like a total ADP pre-combine, and now I'm starting to work on like the post-combine stuff. Zay Flowers has taken a massive, massive jump up post-combine, which is really interesting because I thought he had a pretty good combine. I'm also wondering if people are starting to like watch a bit more tape and like go like, oh, this guy's quite good. And that's why he's starting to bump up the rankings from like the seconds to, this kind of range in the first.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, the early days of it, it's, you've got the Devi community and their projections on him based on it. And you've got the dynasty people who've been watching a lot of college tape. And then I think we get to this time of year and you get people like JJ Zacharias and Pat Corraine, these people who are really, really good at projecting prospects who come to it quite late because the NFL season takes up so much of their time. And they're seeing different things and stuff, which because they're coming from a different mindset. So I always really value getting a wide range of people's opinions on prospects. It helps me because I don't watch any college.
Yeah, at the minute, I'm going through a bit of a slog with college football. It's my first year of really trying to catch up and watch the tape. And it is hats off to guys who do it like the whole time because it is an absolute slog to get through. But yeah, it is nice that a lot of people do it. So yeah, you can kind of pick and choose between people. And Zay Flowers seems to be a beneficiary of that so far. So we got him in at 8. And who's going in at pick 9 of the first round?
Well, I think we've got to take Will Levis here. I think... Again, you kind of talk about wide range of outcomes. I worry that on the night of the draft that Will Levis is going to be the player to slide outside the top 10. I think it's just as likely that he ends up around the mid to late teens as it is that he ends up at sort of pick 4 or 5. I think there's plenty of teams around that range, like the Buccaneers, the Vikings, who could be tempted to take him and sort of just bring him along slowly, or maybe even the Seahawks with their second pick. I think, he's an interesting prospect. My co-host Rich had a great line about him where he called him a Rorschach test. You can see what you want to see in him. You can see elite traits that translate well, or you can see a toolsy quarterback with evident flaws. And I can't really get away from that, because I think it's like, we're hearing that he played injured during the end of the season, and that might have been to do with some of his issues with his plays. But so much of what he does is just poor decision making. It's not making the right throw at the right time. It's not using the right arm angle at the right time. And for all that people say, okay, well, he's an able runner as well. I think he finished last year with like minus 107 yards because he got sacked so many times. So if you're an okay runner, that's one thing. But if you're taking that many sacks, but you're heavily into the minus figures, then it's not a great look. So I think, maybe Will Levis ends up like Mac Jones, where the first season he comes out and he does what he's supposed to do, and he gets the ball to the players at the right time, and people are like, oh, okay, maybe this guy can really play. But I'm just skeptical about him, and I think it's like people will point to players like Justin Herbert when he came out and how skeptical the fantasy community were about him. But I just think it's very much an apples to oranges kind of comparison, and with Will Levis, I think there's more downsides than upsides. But in a super flex draft of 109, 109, like that's fine. I mean, chances are if you're picking at this end of a draft, unless you acquired the pick by trade, you're in the playoffs anyway. So unless your quarterback was Tom Brady who got you there, there's a good chance this is going to be your QB3 on your team.
Yeah, with Levis, I'm glad you actually mentioned the arm angle thing, because every now and again he makes throws. I'm like, that doesn't like. Not only is it a bad decision, but like, oh, it looks weird, right? He's got some kind of mechanics issue there as well. And some people are trying to shoehorn the Josh Allen argument into that. I was like, well, Josh Allen had weird mechanics. Like, that's not a good thing to compare to. like, let's not. A lot of people seem to be really determined to shoehorn in Josh Allen because it's like white guy, same height, same weight. It's like, like you said, it's apples to oranges, right? I don't fully see the comparison there. But you're right. Pick 9, you got a guy that's, probably going to go, to a team that needs a quarterback in the first round. So can't complain too much about that. So we got Levis locked in at 9. Who's coming up next to him at pick 10?
It's going to be Josh Downs next. I think he's somebody that, again, you could see him kind of go in the back end of first round drafts. I wouldn't be surprised if in some drafts he slips further into the sort of like 2.3 range. I think, again, a wide receiver with size kind of concerns to an level. He's 5'9", 171 pounds. So people are going to talk about him being a slot only receiver, but he's got the skills and the route running ability that, he doesn't have to just be a slot receiver. So I think it'll be interesting to see where he goes. If he goes to somewhere, say he goes to the Titans, then he could be on the field straight away enough that he could stay on the field. But if he goes to somewhere with, let's say, I don't know, say somewhere like Washington, where they've already got Dotson and McLaurin, and it's like, okay, well, is he going to get enough play in just 2 wide receiver sets? Or is he going to be the person coming off the field? And I think it's obvious he probably would be for the first season alone. So he's a guy that I think I'll probably end up with a reasonable amount of in Bestball, because he seems like he's got a good ceiling to him. I mean, he caught 72% of his contested catches in 2022, so it's not like he plays small. There's players like Marquise Brown, being a Ravens fan, the amount of times I would see him shy away from contested catches. It was frustrating, but that doesn't really seem to be Josh Downs' way of using his size. He's not afraid to go up and get it.
Yeah, he's a guy I kind of looked into more after I had your co-host Rich on the show. He's big fan of Josh Downs. So I was like, all right, I'll dig into him a bit more and have a look at a bit more. And yeah, I came away really, really impressed. This is like someone who's just like has all the basics locked down, doesn't really make too many mistakes, and just seems like a kind of player an NFL team will really like to have on their roster. So real, solid, good player. And hopefully can do the same for your fantasy team as well. So yeah, good value at 10. And we got 2 picks left of the first round. Who are you going to go with the penultimate one?
I'm going to go with Devin A-Chain. Is that how we pronounce his
Yes.
name? I'm still a little behind on that.
I think Etienne seems about right. Yeah, he always reminds me of. I don't know if you watch The Boys. Do you watch the show The Boys?
No.
There's a character on it called Atrian, and he's really fast, and that's his thing. So I'm like Atrian. That's kind of where I'm going, right?
That works. So yeah, I think again, kind of going back to what I said about Jameer Gibbs. Obviously, they're not the same player, but A-Chain, he had the fastest 40-yard dash amongst running backs this year, the combine with 4.32 seconds. He's 4-star recruit out of high school, 5'8", 188 pounds. So again, we're looking at a slightly smaller back. I think if you were talking about somebody at sort of 195, it'd be a little easy to project him to be able to take a lot of carries. But I'm not always looking for that. Like I mentioned before, I want those guys with breakaway speed. If A-Chain's getting on the field in the first half of the season with limited snaps, he's going to break those big runs. I mean, he rushed for over 1,000 yards in the SEC, showed his ability to carry the ball between tackles and how much he can just really break away from players. And even if it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, well, he's not catching as many balls as I'd like, I think you could get a good situation during his rookie year where you could probably flip him for a first plus further down the line.
Yeah, I think he's just so exciting to watch. Like, he's just so obviously like that extra bit faster than everyone else on a field full of really fast people. And he's just like so much fun to watch. And yeah, I can't wait to see where he ends up. Hopefully he does get a good amount of pass catching. I mean, just the thought of him like running little like screen routes and things like that, like it just, I need to see it. I can't wait to see where he ends up, and hopefully he gets a couple of catches. And I just don't see how within the first like 5-6 weeks we don't see a huge like Sports Center highlight of Etienne taking something to the house. I think that's going to happen at some stage for sure. So he's the second last pick. Who's coming in at the final pick of the first round for you, Tom?
Well, let's go Quentin Johnston. I think the slide's kind of far enough. I think, he's that big body type receiver who the NFL are going to fall in love with. People really like these kind of size athletes. But I think he does have a few flaws. I mean, his contested catch rate was like 34% or something in 2022, which for a guy weighing sort of 200 pounds, 210 pounds, you want to see him dominating. Like if he's going to dominate in the NFL, we needed to see him dominating in those kind of catch points in college. And it's quite hard to imagine that he really takes the leap when he starts playing against cornerbacks like Marlon Humphrey, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay.
Yeah.
You're not suddenly going to start getting better at contested catches. But I think what Quentin Johnston offers is, he gets up to top speed quickly. He's really good at catching the ball downfield as it comes over his shoulders or locating it in the air. And I mean, those kind of plays, if you're good at it routinely, they can be really good for fantasy, particularly in a Bestball setting or Dynasty Bestball. That sounds to me like a really good match if he lands with a quarterback who doesn't mind throwing deep. I think if you put him on somewhere like, Desmond Ridder or Ryan Tannehill or something like that, then we can start to be a little less happy about it. But there's plenty of good quarterbacks who could really use a Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, I can't make my mind up if him being the only big kind of like the only real like top end big receiver in this class is like a really good thing for him or like a really bad thing for him. I can't figure out if the NFL is actually slowly shifting away from that, and you have like your outliers like your AJ Browns and people like that. And actually, he's a bit of a dying breed now, and teams aren't really looking for it. Or maybe they're like, there aren't all these guys. We need to get like Quentin Johnston while he's there. I can't figure it out, Tom. I don't know what to do. What do you think about? Are you on either side of the fence there?
I think it's just tricky. I think it just comes back to landing spot so much, doesn't it? It's like,
100%.
we've seen players with semi-limited skill sets land with, say, an offensive schema like somebody like Kyle Shanahan or something, and just be able to unlock them. I don't think Deebo Samuel was rushing the ball sort of 5 times a game when he was in college.
Yeah.
But if he ends up, let's look back at like a team like the Patriots last season, who were a complete mess with, terrible coaching. You'll end up in that sort of situation, and you're on a uphill struggle for the whole of your career.
Yeah, completely agree. So for now, I think he's still good value. But we'll have to wait where these guys end up. But for now, Johnson's in at the back end of the first, and who's right after him at pick 2-1.
2-1, gonna go Jalen Hyatt. I sometimes have a type for these kind of players who can really get downfield and score points. I think you can make arguments against them, saying, are they going to be able to do that in the NFL? Are they going to be able to do that straight away? Coach is going to utilize them like that. But Jalen Hyatt's ADOT in college was 10.3, 14.1 the year after, and then 13.6 last year. Routinely been one of those players who has just been able to use his speed to create separation and be able to get downfield and completely separate from defenders. And that just feels like a good sign to me. He ran a 4.4 at the combine. I think, again, I kind of really want a good landing spot for him, but give me Jalen Hyatt on the Chiefs. Like everything they hoped they were getting from Marcus Valdes-Scantling, somebody who can play like Mecole Hardman used to do, or like Tyreek Hill did. I'm not comparing Jalen Hyatt to Tyreek Hill.
Also, please don't compare him to Mecole Hardman. That guy sucks, right?
Well, you see, I kind of last year I became a bit of a Mecole Hardman defender at times, because it seemed like things were being scripted for him. And obviously the Chiefs have lost Mecole Hardman, so perhaps he's the kind of player who could help a team like that, or a team like the Eagles, who just pushed ball downfield again and again and again. Mm-hmm. Like I would be completely in on Jalen Hyatt with the right landing spot.
I really like him, actually. A team I think that's been searching for a guy like him for a while is the Chargers. I like him there, actually.
Love that. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
I think he'd be really nice there. So Jalen Hyatt, really nice pick at the start of the second round. Who's in at pick 2 then?
Are we tight end premium?
No, we're not tight. It's not been tight end premium before, so I'll keep it the same for everybody.
Okay. Well, let's go Zach Charbonnet then. I think he's probably the next running back, and we're down to running back 4 at this point. Charbonnet, 6 foot, 214 pounds, rushed for almost 1,400 yards last year. He's not exactly a 3-down elite workhorse running back, but he still had 37 receptions last year, 23 the year before. Yeah, he never scored a receiving touchdown, so it's not like he was turning them into big breakaways. But players this size, he plays quite quick. He had a 4.5 40-yard dash, which isn't lightning, but it's still good. He's got good contact balance. Like, he's not somebody who's easy to bring down. I think he's kind of one of those players that will divide certain people. Certain people just will see, a Gus Edwards style, or some people will, see like more similar to Najee Harris in terms of like their ability to stay on the field. But I think he's somebody that is going to get on the field early, because I think NFL coaches are going to really like him.
Yeah, I think as well, the pass catching thing, I always like to go back to Garrett Price from the Dynasty Nerds when he was on here the first time. I think he talked about, for him, it's pass feel, because these NFL teams, you don't know how they're going to work. So giving people a catching rating coming out of college is often like a futile exercise, because they may never throw them the ball anyway. So it's not for him. Can they catch the ball? Yes or no? And I think for Charbonnet, for me, it's a yes anyway.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like, he's not going to suddenly be schemed into like Austin Eckler type work or, running wheel routes or stuff like that. But I mean, we saw it with Najee Harris. If you get a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball to you like 18 times a game, then you're going to be a PPR god.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got Charbonnet in there. Let's see what the future holds for him. So who's following him at pick 3 of the second round?
It's probably one which might upset a couple of people, but I'm going to go with Marvin Mims. I think, again, another wide receiver who's not exactly prototypical in his size, but I think he's fast. He ran a 4.38. He's able to create separation. I think he's a player that you could utilize all over the field. I think, he's somebody who he's got good hands, but not incredible hands. He's sometimes catching the ball with his arms, he's going up and stuff. But I think he's able to separate well enough that that's going to really help him stay on the field when he does get there. I think he's not somebody that a team wants as their wide receiver one. Like, the Houston Texans shouldn't be drafting him and thinking we can build around him as our focal point. And the same for a team like the Panthers. That's not the kind of wide receiver they need. But Marvin Mims is one of those players that, like, okay, send him to the Vikings. He wouldn't have a huge amount of pressure on him straight away because Justin Jefferson's so good, TJ Hawkinson's so good. But I think that, again, I keep saying it, but in the right place, then Marvin Mims could be a really good fantasy player in year one.
Yeah, I think the only person you're upsetting here, Tom, is me, because Marvin Mims has been going in the third round, and I've been thinking he's a great little sleeper for me. And now you're telling everybody about him and pushing him up into the second. I think he's a really, really good player. Like, he shocked me a little bit at the combine as well. I was like, this guy's so much faster than I thought he was. He doesn't you don't really see it on the field. You see it a bit, but I didn't think he was faster than I think he was the fastest receiver at the combine. Is that right? I think he beat everybody, which is
I think that might be the case. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got that speed. He's got, like you said, pretty good hands, good running. Like, I think he's a really, really good player. And if he is slipping in the draft, then he could be a guy that a couple of years' time, you look back and go, how the hell did Marvin Mims slip all the way down to there? So, yeah, I think that's an excellent pick, Tom, in the second round. So, we're on to pick 2-4 now. So, who's going to be there?
I'm going to go running back and go with Sean Tucker. I think Sean Tucker's one of those where there definitely becomes a bit of a tier break of running backs that I would be willing to take in the second round, full stop. So there might not be many more from here on out. But
yeah,
he's fast, which I think that's, he doesn't have elite sort of pass catching. He's done pass catching in college. I mean, he's not a great pass protector particularly, but that's not something I overly concern myself about. I think with Sean Tucker, he's fast. He was a high school 100-meter and 200-meter champion. He's explosive. And it's like, if you can turn any play into a touchdown run, then you're the kind of player who coaches are going to want to get on the field, particularly because they're going to be like, right, let's give him a couple of touches. Let's see what he can do with it. If you're somebody who doesn't have that upside, then it's like, well, why put that player on apart from to grind out the clock? And that's not him. I think, there's questions about his lack of route running ability because he's very much more just like a dump off type player, but he's the kind of guy who the ball's going to get thrown to him and he'll get his arms out for it, but he's not going to be like, one-handed catching anything and then turning and sprinting or anything like Bijan might be capable of, or the guys in the first round. But at this point in the second round, I really do think there's a cliff edge coming from running backs, and I'd rather take one here than gamble on somebody later.
Yeah, Tucker's in this kind of weird mesh at the minute, almost similar to what tight end 5 to 18 is, right? It's just this kind of weird mush of running backs where I just have to see where they end up, like Tucker and Bigsby and all of these guys. It's very, very landing spot dependent for me. But yeah, we just got to wait and see, because Tucker, like you said, in the right spot could be great. But, if he ends up somewhere where they're like, you're going to be the grinder, it's like, that's not going to end well for him. So we'll have him in at 2-4 for now. Anyway, we'll see where he ends up. He could end up being pushed up. You never know. Who's going to end up at 2-5 then for you, Tom?
Well, let's take a tight end. I mean, you keep hearing about how this is the best tight end class in years, and I don't know. Anytime I start hearing anything like that, I'm always a bit skeptical, because you look back over recent history and some of the best fantasy tight ends, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, they weren't exactly players who were being heralded as that when they were coming out. I think with tight ends, a lot of it doesn't always click straight away, and it's much more, it depends on the scheme, and it depends on the jump that they make and how much they grow when they get into the NFL. But I do like Michael Mayer. I think if you're looking for a tight end who's just going to come into the NFL and straight away just be able to stay on the field for all 3 downs, that's Michael Mayer. And because he can block, and he's a very good blocker. He can catch. I mean, he's got soft hands. It's like, the ball comes to him and it's no bobbling. It's just, he catches it nicely. I think, he's not like a Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, where he could turn and run the ball for 50 yards whilst holding a defender off. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, and runs a 4.7. But he is the kind of player who he can get you 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown on 4 or 5 games during the season. Then that's actually a pretty good return at tight end.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that I just mentioned, like that mush, right? He's a kind of guy that might end up in there, like the kind of, I don't know, not Hayden Hurst. I feel like that's maybe a bit of a disservice to him. But you know what I mean? Like that kind of.
No, I think that's exactly fair. I mean, you can, because Hayden Hurst's ceiling is probably a little bit higher than he's ever got to. But Hayden Hurst has had those games where he's flash and stuff, but he is a touchdown reliant tight end. And I think that's entirely where we are. We move on to the next pick, and I'll take Dalton Kincaid, who might not be a touchdown reliant tight end. But I also think that the floor for Kincaid is a lot lower, because he's, blocking just doesn't exist for him. He's Mike Gesicki. He's, he's Juwan Johnson even. Maybe that's a little harsh on Juwan Johnson, but he's not Isaiah Likely, one of these guys who comes out and he was never asked to block in college. So I'll take Dalton Kincaid, because I think his upside is being Mike Gesicki, which, go back a couple of years before Mike McDaniel was in Miami. Mike Gesicki was great. They were utilizing him heavily in the red zone. And with the right play caller, Kincaid could be excellent. I think if he ends up with a more old school coach, say somebody like Ron Rivera, then I'd probably be a little more concerned about him. And because those kind of guys can sometimes put high value on blocking and football skills. But I mean, Kincaid, 70 receptions last year on 93 targets, 890 yards and 8 touchdowns. He had 8 touchdowns the year before that as well. If I can get a tight end who's going to give me 8 touchdowns, I mean, that's like top 6 tight end in fantasy, and it might take him a year or 2 to do it. But he's the kind of player I don't mind putting on my taxi squad for a year and seeing what happens.
Yeah, absolutely agree. He's the perfect guy to stick on your taxi squad and let him grow, and then use him whenever you're ready. So I think he's a good pick at 2-6. Who's coming up after him at 2-7?
Let's go. Let's go with Hendon Hooker. Let's get a little spicy and say Hendon Hooker sneaks into the first round. You go back to the combine, and before the combine, nobody was thinking Hendon Hooker was going to sneak into the first round. But then Daniel Jeremiah just gushes about what teams have been telling him about Hendon Hooker for the whole weekend, anytime that he got a chance. And then he puts him in his mock draft. And then somebody from CBS put him at like pick 5 to the Seahawks this week, which was clearly clickbait, because, the Seahawks could just take him at 20 instead. But I mean, Hooker, he didn't really, he's played, was it 4 years after a redshirt year in college. So he's coming into the league. I think he'll be 25 before he sets foot on an NFL field.
Yeah.
For comparison, I mean, Lamar Jackson's 26, just turned 26. So we're really talking about a very old prospect. I think it's fair to think that Hendon Hooker, his range of outcomes could be quite large in the NFL. But there were things to like about what he did at college. I mean, in the 11 games he played this year, he threw for 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, and he rushed as well for a decent rate. I can't remember the amount off the top of my head. But through all those many seasons that he had at college, he only threw for 12 interceptions the whole time, which is really impressive. So that's the kind of trait which NFL coaches are going to like. Oh, he takes care of the ball. He keeps the ball in our hands. So I'd be very much fine with Hendon Hooker as a very speculative ad here.
Yeah, Hooker is like, so all accounts that I've seen are he was odds on to win the Heisman before he got injured. So imagine he doesn't get injured, he finishes the year. I don't think there's a world where Will Levis goes ahead of Hendon Hooker in fantasy drafts, in the NFL draft. If he wins the Heisman, he's way up there. So then how much weight are we putting into this injury? As like it was an ACL, right? Which, name a player in the NFL that doesn't have an ACL injury. I think he's being slept on maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to temper your expectations. There's no point taking Hendon Hooker if you need a third quarterback for this season, because it's just, by the time that he's ready to actually take the field, he's going to most likely struggle through
He's got to be 32.
Be as old as Tom Brady. He's, spring activities, OTAs, all those kind of bits, like rookie minicamp. He's not going to be a full go for them.
Yeah.
But if he's in an okay situation, if he lands somewhere with a team who truly can just redshirt him for a year, and normally I hate it when fantasy people talk about, oh, that guy needs to sit. Anyone who says Anthony Richardson would be better off sitting for a year, it's just nonsense. I know Patrick Mahomes did it and everyone likes to hang their hat on that.
Yeah.
But you go back to Trey Lance's rookie season, and by the end of it, Kyle Shanahan was saying, he's learned the playbook. He's made strides on the field. He just needs to play now. And obviously that didn't transpire, and it's always ended up a mess. But I never believe in the idea of it's a great idea for rookies to sit for the whole year. So maybe he gets in late on in the season and a team gets a good look at him. Maybe the Raiders pass up Will Levis and then come round to Hendon Hooker later on. We'll see.
Yeah, Hooker, I like... He's kind of slowly creeping up my board. I like that, though. I think that's a nice... Some people have him like down in the third round. I think 2-7's a real nice spot for Hendon Hooker there. So who's following him up at 2-8?
Let's go Tank Dell. I think he's somebody who might be a little bit further down on the ADP, and maybe I'm just going a little wild here, but I think...
When have to search for him.
Sorry,
Tank Bigsby. Sorry, did you say or Tank
Dell?
Tank Dell. Oh
yeah. Let's get wild here. So, Nathaniel Tank Dell.
Nathaniel Dell. Sorry, yes.
There we go. No, that's all right. So again, this is a player, undersized wide receiver in this class, and he is 165 pounds. So this is real.
Yeah.
I'm aware that this could easily turn out like a Tutu Atwell here. But I think when you watch him, he's very fun. He's an electric type of player. He's an explosive athlete, really top-tier agility, in my opinion. I think he's one of those who he could be somebody who is a gadget-only play for a little while. And obviously when you have a gadget-only play, you risk being turned into somebody like Mecole Hardman, or who we mentioned before. But he had 1,400 yards in college last season, 108 receptions at Houston. I think that he's somebody that, I just like taking dart throws on exciting players when I get to this part of the draft. I'd rather be taking speculative throws on a wide receiver than a running back who's just going to turn into a plodder.
Yeah. Yeah, and if nothing works out for him, he can get a job in the mafia because he's really small. They call him Tank, right? That's what they do, right? They've got big guys called Tiny, they got small guys called Tank. So he's got that waiting for him if things don't work out. So I love it. That's the highest I've seen him go. I didn't even know he was called Tank. I just known him as Nathaniel. So there you go. I'm learning new things today as well. So
see. This is what happens when you get a guy on who's coming to it from a best ball angle a lot of the time, who just,
yeah.
I'm just looking for that explosive guy and thinking, what is the ceiling outcome? And sometimes that pays off for me in Dynasty, and sometimes it ends up like MVS, and we don't need to talk about
it. Yeah, but when it hits, you're like, I absolutely slam dunked that. Yeah, absolutely. So he's locked in there at 2-8. So we got 4 picks left. Who's we'll not do 3-4. That's not a good idea. Who's coming in at 2-9?
Let's go Zach Evans. I think he's somebody that a lot of people would be quite high on. He's got good lateral agility and quickness. Works good in a zone scheme, which is what they ran at Ole Miss. I think he's going to be somebody who people speculate on the speed of, that he can break away. He's got good size. He's over 200 pounds, which, we keep mentioning undersized people in this class. But for a running back, that's really nice to see. Almost at 1,000 yards last season on 144 attempts. He's pretty much very minimal in the receiving game, which is why he's in this kind of range, because throughout his college career, he had a total of 30 receptions in 3 years. So really can't expect a lot on that. I mean, his ADOT over the last 2 seasons was minus 0.6 and then 1.1 yards. So that, part of that can be on the quarterback, but part of that can be the running back just isn't utilized because they don't see him as that type of player. So I think he's a solid floor prospect, and he's the kind of player that when the running back ahead of him gets injured, you should be flipping him.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to bring up. I don't think, and this is probably true for most, second round running backs anyway, but I don't think there's a team in the NFL he could start for right now, like at all. Even like Dameon Pierce, who people might point to being as the worst running back, like starter at the minute, I think Dameon Pierce is better than Zach Evans, because, Zach Evans couldn't really beat out a guy like Kendre Miller, who's not even been drafted yet when he was at TCU. And then he got beaten out by Rashad Judkins, who's a freshman, last year at Ole Miss. I just don't see how he gets on the field, really. That's my big thing with him.
Yeah, I completely can see that point of view, definitely.
Yeah, but you never know. You're right. One injury changes everything in Dynasty. So you never know what could happen with Zach Evans. And we got 3 picks left. Who's coming in at the third last pick?
Let's go Rashee Rice. Mix things up a little bit. Get you to scroll down a little bit.
I'll filter it. I'll do that quickly. I'll be a bit quicker.
It's a 21-year-old, 6'1", 204 pounds out of SMU. I think could have done with running a faster combine. He had a 4.51 40-yard dash, but produced well at SMU last year. He had 96 receptions, 1,350 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's a good route runner, can create separation. I mean, SMU don't ask for players to do an awful lot of the way they do things. So it'd be interesting to see if he can run a full route tree in the NFL, and the kind of coach who asks him to do that. But from a fantasy perspective, again, I think it's boom bust material, but I'm okay with that at this point in the draft.
Yeah, he's a guy like last week, Ryan McDowell was talking about how much he liked him, and now you're kind of mentioning him. So he's a guy I'm going to dig a little bit more into, actually, because there's a couple of people now who know what they're talking about. I've mentioned Rashee Rice, so definitely going to look into him a little bit more. And Tom, you got 2 picks left. Who's the penultimate pick of the draft?
Well, let's go Tank Bigsby. I mean, throwing darts a little bit in terms of running backs, but he does seem like the kind of running back who can get on the field because coaches will love him. I mean, he's got good vision, identifies the gaps properly, 6 foot, 210 pounds. So we've got no worries about what size he is. Yeah, he's a big guy. He runs through people. I think, he's had close to 1,000 yards or over it for the last 2 years. Complete zero in the sort of pass catching game again, really. Well, complete zero is a little unfair because he had 50 receptions over the last 2 years. But again, his ADOT over 3 seasons in college has never been a positive yardage. It's been -3, -1, and -1.8. PPR, we can live with that. If you're getting thrown for like 2 yards, that's like what, 1.2 points or something. That's fine. So he's the kind of running back who, it's not even if a running back ahead of him goes down, he could be used for all 3 downs, but it feels like that isn't going to be how he's used for the whole career. And instead, you kind of just have to temper expectations. But I like him here at this pick.
Yeah, I think that's good value there for Tank Bigsby. And like we talked about earlier, these guys could go anywhere depending on the draft. He could be pushed way up, or he could be off people's boards depending on where he goes. Like it's so hard to tell right now at the minute, right? And we got 1 pick left in the second round. Who's coming off the board last?
I'm going to go Renegade here, but I think because it's the last pick, I think obviously if this wasn't the last pick, I wouldn't be going with it. But maybe I'm just swallowing the pro day hype. But we'll go Israel Abanikanda. I think
Abanikanda. I think I've been told by a good source it's Israel Abanikanda.
Well, there we go. I mean, former 2-sport athlete. Yeah, he ran the 40-yard dash anywhere between 4.26 and 4.32, according to reports. And I know people like to say, okay, pro day times can be difficult, but these are the same NFL scouts who were hand timing at the combine. And obviously the surface is different. And even if it was, say, a 4.34, that's still incredibly fast. I mean, he would have been the fastest running back of the combine. He would have led the position with a vertical jump of 41 inches and a broad jump of 10'8". So as a former 2-sport athlete and track star, that's the kind of player who sounds like he has a really interesting ceiling. I think he's somebody that I would like to see fall to a creative mind. I think, 216 pounds, no size concerns there. I think he's someone that I like taking shots on athletes because, sometimes they can turn into, your players like your Austin Eckler's. And obviously the flip side is they can turn into your Kenny Nwangwu, where they'll take a couple of punt returns to the house every now and again, but that's it. But I mean, I'm treating this like a rookie draft where this is my last pick. And if he's my guy, and I'm going to go get him.
Yeah, and I think a couple of people maybe have learned a lesson from someone like Isaiah Pacheco last year, who, he had the fastest 40 time of all the running backs last year and kind of still wasn't really on people's radar because of what school he went to and all of that. But yeah, whenever a guy does something like Abanikanda has just done, you have to sit up and take a bit of notice. And I don't know, Tom, you might know better than me. They don't use the same kit that they do during the combine at these pro days, right?
Yeah. So whereas the pro day it has an official times radar gun and everything like that, this is just NFL scouts with the stopwatches. But a lot of the times which we were going off of the combine, we were getting the scouted times a lot quicker than we were that. So, and quite often there wasn't that much of a disparity between them.
No. So yeah, it's he's fast, right? How about that? He's definitely fast,
exactly
right?
Fast, decent size, and he could be explosive. I'll take that over 212.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our 2-round draft. And Tom, just before we pull the board away, is there anyone that you're like, what, I didn't get to talk about this guy? Like one kind of sleeper kind of guy you're like, keep your eye out on him?
I think players like Darnell Washington, Tajay Spears, they're both interesting guys. Cedric Tillman. If we were going on further, they were probably guys who I would have talked about a little bit. Kendre Miller, somebody who I know a lot of people like, but he just didn't quite squeeze him there for me.
Yeah. So keep your eye on those 3 guys along with all these great players that Tom's drafted for us today. And Tom, mate, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Dynasty Hot Seat. Just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show again. Do you want to remind people where they can find you on all your work online?
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube. We've got the Fantasy Sanctuary. We've got a lot of Dynasty content at the minute. As soon as the draft happens, then I'll start rolling out a lot of best ball stuff on there, as well as redraft stuff. You can find my written work on Fantasy Pros and Football Outsiders. Find me on Twitter at NFL_Tstrack. Busy time of year, lots going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you're following Tom, especially the Fantasy Sanctuary, right? You guys are super close to a milestone. So if you've not already, make sure you go over and subscribe on YouTube to the Fantasy Sanctuary and get them pushing up towards 500, right? That's been so quick. Congratulations. You guys are putting in so much work. It really is an amazing channel. So make sure you go out and subscribe into there. And subscribe to here too, by the way, right? Don't just leave and don't subscribe here. That'll be mean. So make sure you've hit that subscribe button here too. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Tom, thanks again, mate. Thanks everybody else for listening. And remember, for anything Dynasty you need to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. We'll see you next time. Bye.